Sophia had been living in the old apartment building for a few weeks, and by now she'd grown used to the creaking floors and the musty smell of the ancient wood. It was an affordable place in a quiet neighborhood, and she had little interest in anything beyond her routine. The building was far from glamorous, but it was home until the footsteps began. At first it was easy to dismiss. Late at night, after a long day of work, she would hear the soft, rhythmic tap-tap of footsteps in the hall outside her door. She assumed it was just the building settling. It happened every few nights at odd hours, like clockwork. But then the sound became clearer. One evening, after a particularly long day, Sophia sat on her couch, attempting to relax with a book. The footsteps came, slow and deliberate, moving down the hall. She sighed, irritated at the noise. But then the sound stopped, dead silent. She frowned. She hadn't heard the usual rattle of the neighbor's door opening or closing, just the strange, echoing footsteps. They had never stopped midway down the hall before. Soft creak, then a soft knock on her door. Her heart skipped a beat. No one had ever knocked at this hour. Hesitantly, she stood and walked over to the door. Her hand trembled slightly as she grasped the cold handle. Opening it, there was no one, just the emptiness of the dark hallway stretching out before her. She stepped outside, calling out, "Hello?" Her voice echoed down the hall, but there was no response. The hallway was empty. No lights flickered. No other doors were open. Nothing. The silence was unnerving, almost too perfect. Sophia shook her head, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling that crept up her spine. It's just an old building. I'm overthinking it, she thought. But as she turned to go back inside, she heard it again. This time, the footsteps were behind her. Tapped, tapped, but now it was much closer, and the steps were following her, one after the other. Her heart raced as she spun around, but no one was there. The footsteps didn't stop. They continued to echo through the empty hallway, each step closer than the last. Her breath quickened. She stumbled back into her apartment, slamming the door shut and bolting it. The room seemed to close in on her. She leaned against the door, struggling to breathe as the footsteps continued to echo outside. Then, a voice, a soft whisper, as if right behind her. "Sophia." Her blood ran cold. She froze. How did it know my name? The voice was faint, barely audible, but unmistakable. It was a voice she knew all too well. It was her own. Sophia whipped around, her eyes wide. Nothing. No one. But then the footsteps resumed, louder now, marching closer, right outside her apartment door. The whisper came again. "Sophia, open the door." Terrified, she backed away, her mind racing for an explanation. Was it a prank? This felt different. This felt wrong. The knock came again, harder this time, shaking the door. "Sophia, open the door. I'm waiting." With trembling hands, Sophia grabbed her phone. She quickly dialed the landlord, desperate for some kind of answer, but the line was dead. No signal. Panic flooded her chest. She glanced at the door once more, her eyes scanning the shadows. The knocking continued, persistent. Then, as she turned her gaze to the floor beneath her, her breath hitched. There, at the edge of the door, were her own footprints. Stepping toward the door, slowly, methodically, the knocking stopped. The footsteps echoed in the hallway once more, this time from behind her. She turned around, but all she saw was a reflection of herself in the dark window, standing alone in the room. Then it spoke again, but this time it wasn't a whisper. "I'm here." The last thing Sophia saw before the lights went out was her reflections, smiling.